I'm MJ, this is 4 Laps Media, and we have yet another IndyCar race this weekend, so let's quickly talk about it. After an eventful doubleheader in Iowa, much to kind of everybody's surprise, IndyCar is headed to Canada this weekend for the Ontario Honda Dealers Indy Toronto Street Race. This race is going to be the fourth race in July alone and race number 13 of 17 on the season. It is also going to be the final street course of the season as we only have 2 more road courses and 2 more ovals to round us out. Let's just quickly do some track facts just to kind of give you a little taste of what you're going to be in for this weekend. The Toronto Street Course is 1.786 miles long and it has 11 tight turns. And even with the 10 laps added on from last year we had an 80-lap race. This year we were going to have a 90-lap race. This is still one of the shorter races on the 2025 calendar, being only 160.74 miles total. Before we continue on with our Toronto preview, let's quickly do like a little micro review of the Iowa races since they were so eventful and we have a lot of storylines that bubbled there and are going to continue throughout the rest of the season. First and foremost, let's talk engines. Chevrolet finally had their first win at race 1 of Iowa. They had Pato O'Ward P1, Joseph Newgarden P2, and Will Power P3. Of course, the all Chevy podium was immediately answered with an all Honda podium during race 2 on Sunday, but that's neither here nor there right now. But we can also talk about Penske. Penske seemed to kind of have a little bit more luck this weekend. Joseph Newgarden overall had a pretty decent weekend, while it might not have been the weekend he wanted, because he did have a car that I feel and I think he felt could have won both races. He did put it on pole for race number 1, ended up getting P2. And then for the second race, this was a little less lucky for him. He kind of just had poorly timed pit stops, poorly timed yellow flags, and rinse and repeat. It just truly, I guess luck really wasn't in his favor. Will Power had a good race during race 1. Obviously, he ended up making on to the podium with Joseph. Unfortunately, during race 2, he ended up losing power and DNFing. And then Scotty Mack, he crashed during qualifying, ended up having to start both races from the back of the grid, was able to put on like an absolute clinic, able to move from 27th to P4 for the first race, but then unfortunately on Sunday ended up getting taken out by Devlin DeFrancesco, who spun and just kind of collected Scotty Mack, and that was the end of his day. So keep an eye on Penske. That's just been kind of the theme of the season. Keep an eye on Palou, keep an eye on Penske. But let's kind of talk about who we're going to keep an eye on specifically for Toronto. So a couple drivers have actually raced in Toronto 18 times. Those are going to be Will Power and Scott Dixon. Will Power with 2 wins and 5 podiums here, and then Scott Dixon with 4 wins and 8 podiums. Another person to look out for, another Penske to look out for, Joseph Newgarden has won here twice. And then we have Christian Lundgaard, who won in 2023 from pole. This was his first and only win to date back when he was with RLL. And then last year, we actually had a Andretti lockout that perfectly converted to an Andretti 1-2. Colton Herta on pole, and with the win, Kyle Kirkwood starting on second and finishing in second. We also had the narrative of the Arrow McLaren reserve driver situation last year, and I'm going to talk about the Arrow McLaren reserve driver situation of this year in a second, so just hold tight, but I think it would be interesting to revisit last year's situation first. Last year, Alexander Rossi, who drove the number 7 for Arrow McLaren, broke his thumb in a collision with a tire barrier during practice 1. Arrow McLaren ended up calling up Theo Pourchaire to act as the reserve driver and drive in the number 7. Theo, who previously was one of the number 6 carousel of drivers, having driven 5 races in the number 6 of Arrow McLaren before being suddenly replaced by Nolan Siegel. And Theo had quite the weekend as he was basically overnight shipped from Europe and made it just in time to qualify in a car that was made for Alexander Rossi on a street course that he had never raced or practiced at. Ended up qualifying in P26 and finished the race in P11. So not too shabby. He was also the sole Arrow McLaren finisher as the other 2 drivers were involved in a large pileup with 13 laps to go in the race. Actually, only 15 cars ended up finishing the race last year. So if that gives you any idea of the potential of chaos for this track, it could be interesting. But to bring it to the present, on Monday, Arrow McLaren announced that Linus Lundqvist would act as the reserve driver for the number 6 Arrow McLaren of Nolan Siegel if he was not cleared to race by this Thursday. Last weekend at Iowa during race number 1, Nolan Siegel had a crash late in the race and was not medically cleared to race during race 2 on Sunday. Of course, we hope that Nolan Siegel is doing well, that he isn't injured and is able to race this weekend, but I do think we should talk about Linus Lundqvist and the significance of this call-up. Linus Lundqvist is a former IndyCar driver. Last year, he drove the number 8 for Chip Ganassi Racing. Unfortunately, with the introduction of the new charter system, Chip Ganassi had to decrease their rides from 5 cars to just 3 entrants, and Linus unfortunately lost his seat. He was not able to secure a ride with any other team for this year. However, as far as I know, he goes to quite a few of the races on his own dime and kind of makes himself available for other teams if there were an opportunity for him to get into a car. So we will know on Thursday whether or not Nolan Siegel will be in the car this weekend or Linus Lundqvist, so keep your eye out for an update from Arrow McLaren. But let me know any of your predictions for this weekend, or even any of the drivers you felt were standouts from last weekend that maybe we hadn't talked about earlier in the season. I'd be very curious to know who you felt put on a good performance during the Iowa doubleheader. And as always, don't forget to tune into the race this weekend at noon on Fox.